Hey everybody, I'm Fox with FoxeoGames, and this is Odin Sphere Leifthrasir for the PlayStation 4, also available on the PS Vita and PlayStation 3. I'll be looking at only the PlayStation 4 version. Odin Sphere was originally released for the PlayStation 2 back in 2007 to mostly positive reception. Oh, and I'm going to be pronouncing the subtitle Leifthrasir and just hope that I'm saying it correctly. If I'm not, oh well. Odin Sphere Leifthrasir is Vanillaware's remaster of the original game, revamping the combat system and upgrading the visuals to full HD. And I have to say that it's impossible not to notice the incredible and unique visuals this game has. The art style in Odin Sphere has that one-of-a-kind look that only Vanillaware can accomplish. Other games they developed include Muramasa the Demon Blade and Dragon's Crown. Muramasa also received the remaster treatment, receiving a PlayStation Vita port of the formerly Wii exclusive title. I own both the Muramasa remake and Dragon's Crown and plan to review them both in the future at some point. Back to Odin Sphere Leifthrasir, the visuals were astounding in the original PS2 title, but they're even more breathtaking this time around in glorious full HD at 60 frames per second. Well, unfortunately, my capture card wouldn't actually capture all the way up to 60 FPS, so we're limited here to 30, and I apologize for that, but guess what? I've already purchased a new capture card to take care of that issue. Now, while the game normally runs at the full frame rate, it did drop at times when loads of effects were present on the screen simultaneously. It didn't happen often and shouldn't bother you too much, but I did find the sound stutter during these moments a bit distracting. As you can clearly see, Odin Sphere is essentially a 2D beat-em-up, but don't think it's that simple. There's a ton more to this game. You level up with experience points, typical of any RPG. There's an abilities system for choosing which of your various combat techniques you'd like to enhance with a resource known as Phozon. Skill points are used to unlock unique passive perks like increased health from eating food, faster movement, or increased damage to aerial enemies. You can find and collect a lot of different items. There are pieces of equipment that you can wear for various effects, empty potions and reagents for alchemy, food items to be used in recipes, coins for purchasing meals at restaurants, and more. As you progress through the levels, you'll find that some areas are quite optional or maybe locked and require a key from elsewhere in the level. While you don't have to explore every room in every area of the game, doing so will get you more stuff and buff up your character. The combat in this game is a combination of beat 'em up and hack and slash elements. Rather than just swinging a weapon or punching like many 2D beat 'em ups, you have a variety of abilities to use during combat. These can be mapped to button combinations just like special moves in a fighting game, although here they are exceptionally simple combos that are easy to pull off, thank goodness, like pushing forward in circle or up in circle. You can move around with either the D-pad or the analog stick, but I highly recommend using the D-pad as it's much more accurate. There's a lot to the combat in the game, but fortunately you don't have to be a master of it all to progress through to the end. In fact, I didn't even realize how to use those special abilities until a few hours into the game, having never pushed the L1 button. Your abilities use up your power meter and some crystal resource, which do automatically regenerate over time and as you strike enemies. Unlike the original game, basic attacks no longer consume your power meter, except in the case of the character Mercedes, but there's good reason for that. After each battle segment, you'll receive a score from S to E, S being the highest. The higher the score, the better the rewards. It's an interesting system, but to be honest, it feels like nearly every other room and every level of this game is a battle segment, and sometimes these battles only last a minute, or sometimes just a matter of a few seconds. I grew very tired of sitting through the scoring screens, which just felt like giant interruptions to the pace of the game. I constantly mashed the circle button to skip through it as quickly as possible. I think the pacing would have been much better had the score just popped up on the screen very quickly without interfering with progression. It just pops up way too often for my tastes. The game lets you go back and play through areas you've already completed, so for those so inclined, you can max out your characters and seek out each and every collectible item in the game. Some significant changes were made to the combat system in this remaster, and I have to say that I pretty much like them all. I think it makes the game play a whole lot better and a whole lot faster and more intuitively. Combat in the new Odin Sphere is simply faster paced and more fun, hands down. But Classic Mode is offered for those who prefer the old system, but I don't recommend it. The level and enemy design is spectacular in its own distinctive way. Vanillaware's uncanny art style really shines through here, as nearly everything looks and feels meticulously handcrafted. I did at times find the proportions of the characters to be just a bit oddly imbalanced, but there's no denying that it's a visually fascinating game. The variety in level design is excellent, from vine-filled forests to snow-covered mountains to the fiery lava pits. There's a lot to explore here. I have to say that of all of Vanillaware's games, which all of them look excellent, I think this one looks the best. As mentioned, there's an alchemy system for creating potions. These range in effect from healing you and removing status effects to causing damage to enemies. You can pop a potion to restore health or toss one at your enemies to poison them. It's up to you which potions you want to create and use. I recommend making a lot of healing potions because you can never have enough of those. Potions also have various levels of effectiveness based on their rank. One really cool part of Odin Sphere is that enemies can also use potions, and if you knock them out while they're trying to use one, it'll actually drop on the ground and be available for you to pick up. Food plays a huge role in the game. In addition to healing you, it will also give you experience points and add to your maximum health. Some food is obtained and eaten at any time, while other food has to be purchased and eaten at the restaurant that you buy it at, including the traveling chef, who can be called at rest areas by hitting this bell. The traveling chef requires ingredients to prepare the meals, while the restaurants require you to give up various coins to purchase your dinners. There are lots of recipes to be found throughout the game world, and some recipes will prepare takeout food, allowing you to eat it on the go should you need some quick health during the levels. There's also a bit of agriculture in the game. You can plant seeds and then use Phozon to grow them to fruition. Each seed produces a different result, and there are also plants in the game that specifically produce Phozon for your seeds, so you'll always want to make sure to plant something next to them. With so much stuff to collect, your inventory can fill up really fast. Fortunately, you can drop items you don't want or store items for later in a box at rest points and in towns. Your inventory space can be upgraded by finding bags during your travels, which allow you to carry more. I highly recommend offloading your recipe ingredients and unused equipment into the box, as well as any excess seeds and vegetables. Speaking of the vegetables, you will at various points stumble upon these living veggie creatures hidden in the ground. By hitting the right spots, they'll pop up and then attempt to run off. Hit them again, and they'll be available for you to pick up and use. For example, carrots can be combined with empty bottles to make healing potions. While you can eat these plants and ingredients by themselves, it's much more effective to wait and use them to craft potions or create meals. You'll get much more benefit out of it. The fruit you collect in the world can be consumed in the game, and it provides both health regeneration and a boost to your maximum health as well as experience points. This creates an interesting dynamic in which you have to decide to eat all the fruit now and gain a level or two, or hold on to the fruit and eat it when you need health, leveling in the middle of combat. I recommend the former. Hang on to these and eat them as you need them for the health benefit, because you'll still get the experience points either way. You can equip 3 items, which take the form of rings, pendants, talismans, belts, and so on. They will grant you passive bonuses, which will stay in effect until you take them off. Which ones you equip depends on your playstyle and build. Do you want 10% more health, or do you want faster power regeneration? It's up to you. Now, you've probably noticed me playing as several different characters, but this is not like Dragon's Crown where you pick from a list of characters to play as. Instead, the game is split up into books and chapters, and each book represents the adventures of one of the 5 characters. Each time you load up your save game, you control a young girl in a small room. One after another, you can pick up and read each book corresponding to the characters, playing through each of their adventures in sequential order. You can go back to previous books if you want to as well. Oh, no you don't, kitty. Get back here. Note that each new book begins a new character's storyline, and so you will essentially be starting over with a brand new character at base level. You do not carry over your experience, your abilities, or your items from your previous character. Don't worry though, because each of the 5 characters plays significantly differently from one another and changes things up just enough to keep it interesting. Mercedes brings the biggest change to the combat, as she can not only freely fly around, but she attacks with a crossbow, essentially turning the game into a hybrid beat 'em up and shoot 'em up. My favorite character by far was Velvet. I love her design and I love her chain weapon. Whew, man, that style, that grace, there's just no competition.
Hey, wait!
Don't disturb me!
Oh, and that sass. Velvet, if I weren't already happily married, it'd be me and you. I really wanted to get a Velvet figure to put on my shelf, but I'm just not sure I want to pay $200 for it. Oh well, I guess for now I'll just have to be happy with Xiaomei, Supersonico, and Cosmos. Anyway, not only do the characters play differently, but each one progresses through his or her own storyline. You start as Princess Gwyndolin, daughter of Odin. You'll find that as you progress, you will bump into the other characters you haven't yet played as, and in some cases you'll actually fight them. Their stories occasionally overlap and intertwine in interesting ways, and eventually it all comes together to make a cohesive whole. Still, each one of them has their own challenges to overcome and issues to address. While the voice acting can be incredibly stilted and forced at times,
I have a report, Your Highness. The Aesir have launched an all-out assault. They are attacking our headquarters with all their soldiers.
Father, please wait. A king cannot idly abandon his own castle. If I had not let the witch go, this would not have happened.
It's fortunately never terrible. The story may at first seem simple, and at times it is, but it quickly becomes more complex and deep. There are some genuinely heartfelt moments during the adventures of these 5 people, despite the fact that the fantasy world of the game doesn't always feel compelling or complete. Characters will frequently talk about things that often go unexplained or unexplored, and at times the dialogue can feel like lines are missing or parts of the story were cut out haphazardly. Don't expect an entirely cohesive narrative, and don't be disappointed if not every aspect of the story is explored to the depth it probably should be. Unfortunately, you will find that many of the levels, enemies, and bosses are mostly just repeated from one character to the next. Don't be surprised to traverse nearly identical areas with many of the exact same boss encounters you fought with the previous characters. Each character does seem to have some unique encounters, but most of them will look identical to the ones from the previous characters. So, by the time you're getting to the 4th and 5th characters in the game, it gets really repetitive and you start to see these same enemies and these same bosses that you fought multiple times before. But fortunately, the music in the game is either good or amazing. The basic combat track that plays a lot never became tiresome for me, and one particular track was especially moving and emotional. This is a soundtrack worth listening to outside of the game. What did become tiresome for me were some of the sound effects the enemies made when they're injured. Some enemy grunts would echo over and over and over again, even to the point of absurdity. Since you're stacking up combo hits on enemies, it seemed ridiculous to me to have the same enemy make the same grunt noise nearly a dozen times in a row in quick succession. They really needed to put a cap on how many of these sound effects would play one after another. With the changes made to the gameplay and the spruced up visuals, Odin Sphere Leifthrasir is a magnificent game that held my interest from beginning to end, with only a few moments of tedium that were resolved by taking short breaks. I kept coming back until I finished it, and I'm glad I did. There's easily over 30 hours of gameplay here. I highly recommend the game even at the full price of $60. I don't regret my purchase one bit. Have you played Odin Sphere Leifthrasir, and if so, what did you think of it? How does it compare to the original? I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please let me know in the comments section below, and don't forget to like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already, and you can check the video description for links to Twitter, Facebook, Twitch, and all that other good stuff. As always, I'm Fox with FoxeoGames, and I will see you guys in the next video game review.